Welcome to the Spark of Ages podcast, where we're talking to founders, innovators, CEOs, investors, designers, and artists. I'm talking game changers about their big world-shaping ideas and what sparked them. I'm your host, Rajiv Parikh. I'm the CEO and founder of Position Squared, a growth marketing company based in Palo Alto. So yes, I'm a Silicon Valley entrepreneur, but I'm also a business news junkie and a history nerd. I'm fascinated by how big world-changing movements go from the spark of an idea to an innovation that reshapes our lives. In every episode, we're going to do a deep dive with our guest about what led them to their own eureka moments and how they are going about executing it, and perhaps most importantly, how they get other people to believe in them so that their idea could also someday become a spark for the ages. And if you like what you hear, please take a moment to rate it and comment. You can also send feedback to us directly to spark@position2.com. This is the Spark of Ages podcast. So here we are with Tae Hea. I met him a couple years ago, and what I love about him is that he's ever curious. He's digging in to what drives growth for companies, what drives great technological change, which is exactly what I love. And he's turned it into a methodology that's super easy to understand.
Awesome. Let's get into our conversation with Tae Hea Nahm.
Tae Hea Nahm is the co-founding managing director of Storm Ventures, an early-stage VC firm investing in B2B software firms worldwide. Storm has invested in 9 unicorns, including Marketo, Talkdesk, and Workato. As an investor, he's also the founding CEO of Airspace, which was later sold to Cisco for $450 million. Tae Hea, welcome to the Spark of Ages.
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity and the kind introduction.
One of the things we found really interesting about your approach is about how much focus and emphasis you place on psychology and emotions, because people who are growing a company so rapidly, it's so challenging for them on the company and its people. You think growth is just super fun, but actually it's not. And what I like about you is you think about how it impacts the business, the leaders, and the startups, and ultimately who becomes the hero. So for anyone who really wants to dive into the nuances of Tae Hea's approach to growth and go-to-market, you can go to Storm Ventures, Survival or Thrival, gtmfit.com and find all the details. In his podcast and more, they help you build the right surfboard to help your company unlock growth at any stage of your company's journey. Now, one of the key elements of what you talk about is the importance of making an actual customer the hero of the customer journey. So can you briefly explain what that means and what led you to that?
Sure. The entire go-to-market methodology of mine is not like a technique like product-led growth, sales-led growth, or marketing. Instead, it's all based on customer empathy. And what led me to that is working with attending board meetings with very smart founders, visionary founders, and they'll come back and say, oh, the customer's stupid. Oh, the customer doesn't get this. Or it was a political decision. And as I went through it time and time with companies, I realized that regardless of whatever go-to-market you pursue, you need to have empathy for your customer. And ultimately, it's about how to make that person successful and make them a hero.
That's amazing. So this came to you when? Like when you first started on that journey, like you were in law and associated with law doing work for startups. When did that realization come to you?
Well, as an attorney, the key is getting clients. And so once I started having to get clients and learning how to market and sell to get clients, I realized that at that point, empathy is so important to really understand what they want, what their agenda is.
That's amazing. In that journey, you came up with these terms. One of them is the notion of pain relief, right? And we always talk about people's pain points. Right? And that becomes a point at which we're trying to solve it. But you had a twist on it.
Right. So what I say is that the journey that you begin with your customer normally begins if your potential champion has an urgent pain. And so if they don't have an urgent pain, then they're reluctant to really begin a journey with you. And that's because I have a particular model of a B2B customer who's someone who's relatively smart, but lazy and want to look good with their boss. And so if you don't overcome, if they don't have an urgent pain, then the laziness thing is I'll look at it tomorrow. And then tomorrow is I'll look at it tomorrow. And so next thing you know, it's months before they engage.
And yeah, so they meet you for the first time. You're an entrepreneur. So if they're a normal company, you have so many alternatives you can buy from, right? You have all these established vendors. Why would someone want to work with you?
Right. So once you have someone who has an urgent pain, the next question is why you? And that's where I found that what companies really need is to have a wow, something that just really excites the potential champion, so they want to go with you. And you can see the wow because it changes their body language. They start asking a lot of questions. They bring in their boss and their colleagues and so forth. So you need a wow.
Right. There's this whole thing that pops, right? That
yes.
You're sitting there across from someone and all of a sudden they go, like, and you get that feeling.
Right.
Because the way they look at it is, I can work with anybody in the world.
Exactly.
Isn't it that you got to connect emotionally? Like, isn't that the thing?
It's more of you excite emotionally.
Yeah.
So in fact, that's why I found as I'm doing these workshops with our companies that you need actually two very different types of wow. At the beginning, when you first meet with your potential champion, you need something to just really excite them so they want to keep being with you. And so we say you need a date wow. You need a reason why they should have a second date with you and a third date with you, why they should keep dating you. So, and if you don't have that date wow, then we see very poor conversion after first meetings.
So filling out your Tinder profile is important work, is what you're trying to say, right? Like being able to really have that, that log line and those like cool pictures of you in front of LACMA, that really matters.
It could be that cool picture. It could be some story. You need something to excite the prospect so they say they want to keep dating you.
What's an example of a date wow that one of your entrepreneurs had? I mean, other than Sandeep's version, which is Tinder, what's the Tinder version for a company?
I find the best date wow is very fast time to first value. So let's go back through the process. You have this potential customer that has an urgent pain, and so they meet with you. So have an urgent pain, and if you could offer them pain relief in 5 minutes, that's the best date wow. So I'll give you an example, Rajiv, is where early investors in TalkDesk, one of the first cloud call center software companies and doing phenomenally well. And they were one of the first so that you can have a call center without buying any specific hardware, just have a headset and a browser and your call center's working in 24 hours, all connected with Salesforce, Zendesk, and so forth. So you have an instant call center in 24 hours with no special hardware.
So it was so compelling because otherwise it would take months or years to set up.
Yes, and you got to buy all this extra hardware, all this kind of stuff.
On premise, on your machine, just set up and go.
In the cloud.
In the cloud.
In the cloud. You just, with your browser, you have a call center in 24 hours.
That's incredible.
And you can pay for one call center agent, and it scales up to thousands.
So it's truly transformative for the right type of customer that wants to solve this problem right away.
So what's the next wow? You said there's 2 wows?
Right. So the date wow, as I said, is critical. So you start getting your champion excited about you. But normally, in order to get it approved, you need to get the committee approval. It's just like you start dating, and then you need the family to approve the marriage.
Right.
And so that's why we say we need a merry wow.
Been there.
Yeah. So the merry wow is what gets the boss, gets the committee, get all that to sort of say this is the right partner. And so it's about giving your champion the merry wow to help the champion get that consensus approval. And that drives conversion at the bottom of the funnel.
And a lot of folks focus just on that. They don't think about
Yes.
the urgent pain. They focus on after that.
Well, what I find is that in the companies is that you're right. There's a lot of focus on the merry wow, because that's usually happens with trials. And if you don't get the trial, then everyone wonders what went wrong.
Yeah.
But when I did, and I've done about 60 workshops with our companies, and I talk to them, and very few work on a date wow. Because if a customer doesn't show up on a second date, there's usually no feedback.
That's right.
And so the product team doesn't know what to work
Get ghosted.
Yeah.
They get ghosted.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
And they blame it on the salesperson.
exactly. So they say it's a sales problem because
Terrible
sales isn't
salesperson won't even follow up.
right. Right. And so here I do these workshops, and they go, and no one's working on, the product team's not working in a date well. And you have poor conversion after first meetings, and they think it's purely a sales problem. But sales doesn't know what to do.
But if the product was really compelling, then they would get you past that first one. Or if the urgent pain was truly there, you would.
Well, the urgent pain is why they meet you, but
And
you
then
need
the
a date
date
wow to solve that urgent pain.
And so so the date wow for Talkdesk was the notion of a
24-hour, you get your call center up and running.
And what was the merry wow for them?
It is that it has security, it's got scalability, it's the right long-term partner.
Just like if your family was actually evaluating a marriage partner.
Exactly. And that's why I say, date wow. The reasons why you want to date someone may not necessarily be the same reasons why you should marry someone.
So the cool guy on a Harley may not be the one.
Exactly. But if you don't have the date wow, then you don't get to the marriage discussion.
If you don't have the Harley, you may not even get to
exactly. So, and that's why it's important for the product team to understand you need both.
That's great. And I think you take it a little further, right? Is you have this notion of date wow, marry wow, but that's not enough.
Yeah. So that gives you the reason.
Now you're in. And usually what happens with startups is we get the deal and we all celebrate.
Yes.
Yeah, we go out for drinks, we go out for wine, we take our VC out, they buy the wine. Hopefully.
Absolutely.
And we're out there, we're partying. But is that enough?
Well, the first thing I do, and as I say, the whole idea of this methodology is empathy, right?
Yes.
Is while we're celebrating, our champions freaked out.
Yep.
And
Buyer's remorse.
Not just buyer's remorse, is that
buyer fear.
They put their neck out
Yes.
to do this. If the vendor fails, then many times the champion could get dinged. So they lose a promotion. They may even get fired.
If they take a big enough risk, they bet the company.
Exactly. So the point here about empathy is that first contract, while we are celebrating, like ring the bell, our champion is freaked out. And is anxious. And so this is important, as I say, in terms of empathy, to understand where they're coming from.
That's amazing. Because then once you know that, you realize that, okay, and a lot of times you've built up a product barely just to get you off the ground. And it's not all fully fleshed out as you at least presented it.
That's right.
So then you've got to pay special attention to making sure that person becomes a
hero.
There you go.
Exactly. And so between first contract and hero are some steps.
That's right.
That we found that it's important to follow. And by the way, this whole outline is a 9-step process on how to make your champion a hero, which really, in my mind, is what defines customer empathy.
I love this. So listen, I'm the little brother that went off to Hollywood and started writing silly stories. Like that was kind of my relationship to Rajiv and all this. And so but what I've learned so much about the hero's journey. We talk about it all the time in all the stories that we write out here, whether it's a script for a TV show or a feature film or whatever. I'm curious if that sort of influenced you, like Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. Is that something that's played into what you've created here, or did you just like incidentally come up with this?
No.
As well?
Absolutely. As I, there's so much about heroes, the hero story and how people become heroes, especially in media. And it played a big part. Yes.
To make that connection to the customer. So you just basically were like, let's make the customer the hero of their own story, and then we are essentially the supporting cast to help them through all the points of their journey.
Exactly. And that's why, just like one very simple thing is a lot of companies I know like to write customer case studies about how their product is fantastic. It does all these great things and so forth. And then they get customer quotes to validate the customer case studies. And I'm saying instead of that, you should, and this is actually what Chandar, he was the former CEO of Marketo and Coupa, suggested, is that instead of customer case studies, have hero stories. About how your champion became a hero as crusaders of change happens to use your product. But using your product is the secondary part. It's more about how your champion became a hero.
That's amazing, because then what happens, right, is when you present it from a hero point of view, when you go to the next company that you're pitching, they know. They start to connect the dots and they say to themselves, wow, this isn't just something good for my company and my strategy. This is good for me.
Yeah. And the whole relationship I find between the company and the customer changes is that, and I just had this discussion with one of our companies, and they were saying is that it had a phenomenal change because now success is not about selling more, about having these long-term contracts, these multi-million-dollar deals. Its success is about how to make your champion a hero. It changes the culture of the company. It changes the interactions with the customer, and the customer can feel it.
It's really interesting, and they feel it. They then work with it. You pay attention to it as a company, and then so this is that notion that you get those initial ones, and that a lot of folks just talk about getting product market fit, right? But you guys actually have a wrinkle to that. You say product market fit is kind of interesting because you can get product market fit. You can get about 20 customers if the founder does their job and sells a bunch. But that's not enough to drive growth. There's a new term.
Right. So we say that product market fit is necessary but not sufficient. Instead, what you need is to unlock growth. And what I mean by that is, what you have with product market fit is you've got happy customers, people that are using it is critical. And what we used to do was, okay, we have product market fit. Let's just hire great go-to-market people. Give them a big budget.
Turn on marketing.
And turn on marketing.
Higher position squared.
Exactly.
Because we know all we got to do is turn the crank. Just get 10 more people like the CEO.
Fuel to the gas, right?
Exactly. Just get all
fuel
these
to the
leads,
fire.
hire 20 more reps.
It's so easy.
And then you just grow.
Yeah, copy paste.
And what we found instead is that burn rate goes up, results are flat, and people are freaking out. And we end up losing money.
And people they hire tons of salespeople, spend money on marketing. They wonder why the salesperson can't nail it, the marketer can't nail it. So now this notion of unlock growth is also, I think you called it when you did the book with
go-to-market fit.
Was go-to-market fit.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we say you have to find go-to-market fit, and what that is a repeatable process that works.
It's couples therapy. If we're going back to the analogy, it's like now you're married and that's cool, but guess what? You got 40 more years of this relationship, 50 more years of this relationship to figure out.
Right. So, you want a simple, repeatable process that mere mortals can do, that it's not just superheroes like founders can sell.
Right. Founders know everything about it. And all the background, but it doesn't necessarily translate. Like for the next one to get their date wow and marry wow, you have to make it simple and straightforward. And I think one of the things I liked about when you wrote about it, you have to get it on one sheet.
Yes,
you have to have this this go to market concept of repeatability on one sheet because you're going to scale it.
Yes,
and it has to work. And so what's one of your favorite stories of a company getting go to market fit?
Well, I mentioned TalkDesk, and they just exploded. But also another is like Marketo. Marketo was great at demand generation. It helped create this whole idea of demand generation of getting leads. And so I'd go to board meetings. I'd go to different companies, and they would say, we're missing our numbers. Why? We can't get enough leads. And then one of the board members say, well, why don't you do demand generation and get more leads?
And so then how did it shift from Phil Fernandez, the founder and CEO, and John Miller, one of the other co-founders, my good friend, your good friend. How did it go from those two selling to everybody selling, that go-to-market fit?
Well, they built a simple, repeatable process. So what is the urgent pain? Well, you need to get leads. Okay. And then with that, for urgent pain, what is the use case and the customer profile that matches to it? And then you go in with a very simple date wow. And there again, the question is why Marketo versus Eloqua or someone else, is that Marketo was something very easy. You could get it up and running really fast.
Right. So that's the part that is repeatable. A salesperson could go pitch that.
Yes.
And it was straightforward enough for the marketer on the other side to say, oh, I got it.
Yeah, this can give me quick pain relief. So you start with an urgent pain, because if you don't have an urgent pain, they're not going to meet you. So you have an urgent pain, and then the date wow is fast relief. So you have fast time to value. And then, Merry Wow is about why this can scale. This will be the right long-term solution. And with that, you land and you get the first contract. If you don't have an urgent pain, they're just not going to meet with you. If you don't have a date wow, you just have poor conversion at the top of the funnel. And then if you don't have a Merry Wow, you don't, get the boss or the committee approval. So each one of those is sort of a critical element. And then if you have it, then you can build a repeatable playbook to execute on it. But if you don't have an urgent pain, then
you're wasting your time.
Yeah, and if you don't have a date, wow, you're just going to have poor
slow, forever, long.
Right. Yeah. And so that's why I look at this as sort of, here is the framework, and then we go through with the executive team, and they know that they have to build, because like coming up with a date wow, it's a cross-functional activity. Sales can't do it by themselves. So you have sales, product. And so it's about building the right cross-functional team. But if I could sort of continue on with the customer journey, because as I said, we talked about right now at first contract, and I'm thinking, how do you go from first contract to hero? Because usually, as I say, first contract is when our champion is freaked out.
Yeah.
So the next milestone, what typically people talk about is like completing of onboarding, you complete your checklist, all that kind of stuff. And to me, that's not the next milestone. The next milestone,
it's actually something else.
Yes. You have to deliver first value.
You got to get them something. And it can't be 6 months away.
Yes. And so what is first value? It's when the champion's boss or peers tell them you made the right decision.
For my company, I tell them, we got to get it done in the first month.
Yes.
You better give them something in the first month. Don't give them this 6-month project and deliver wheeling.
Right. So fast time to first value is so critical, but first value is delivering something so that the champion's boss or peer says you made the right decision. Because until then, that anxiety doesn't go away.
That's right.
That's interesting. That's like it's almost out of your hands.
Your hero's a little more relaxed.
Yes. And so what you need to do is you have to find what metrics, onboarding metrics or things like that correspond to the champion getting this social affirmation. And that's what I'm saying. This go-to-market process is all about empathy. It's about understanding your champion, their fears, their needs, and trying to help them along the way.
So then you nail that. You got that initial social affirmation. You got that, whatever the metric is for like a talk desk or maybe for
it's getting the first campaign
running,
right? Or getting the first agent up and running. Yes.
Right. And then you said there's a couple more.
Yes. So after first value, that's when it's like a confidence builder. The next major milestone is what I say is that it becomes standard workflow.
Yes.
What I mean by standard workflow is that there's a critical mass of users that are actively using the product so that even if your champion leaves, the product is sticky.
And that kills a lot of companies.
Yes.
I'm telling you, I just sat in a quarterly business review of a company that has a high churn rate. Why? Because when the sponsor leaves,
yes,
they shut off the software.
Exactly. So it turns out that if you don't achieve standard workflow where it becomes a habit within a company, you're at high renewal risk. Because if your champion leaves, you're gone.
That's the kiss of death.
Yes. And so that's why I said you need fast time to value, and then you need this sort of fast time to standard workflow. So it sort of becomes a habit. I mean, think of yourself. I mean, if someone buys all these like new SaaS applications or something, but you never log on to it, it's not part of your workflow. I don't know about you, but I even forget my password. I forget.
But you got your 2-year contract, so you're all set. But not
then
really.
Then you're just stuck.
You have all that longer contract gives you time to do is establish it as a
standard workflow. Yes.
And then once you get to the standard workflow, what's the next one?
So
that's your 5, right?
I think it's like 6, but yeah. So standard workflow is like it becomes a habit within the company, and then the next thing that would say is that it's about driving adoption to full deployment.
Yes.
Because once it's full deployment, your champion feels victorious. He's now, or she is a hero because an opportunity to become a hero because it's now fully deployed. So it vindicates my decision.
Companies seeing huge value.
Yes.
So in the Talkdesk case, it's been fully deployed. They have a whole contact center running. They're seeing benefits that they didn't get before.
Yeah. And so it's about driving full deployment. And I find that there's a metric that I started using that I really like to measure this, to drive adoption, that is, and call it net usage retention.
That's right.
So we calculate the same way you calculate net revenue retention, but it just measures, are my existing customer, is this customer using the product more or less?
That's right.
If it's 100%, it's flat. If it's 140%, it's going up 40%.
It's like Snowflake. It's like a special Snowflake.
It's like Snowflake. So the whole idea is that net usage retention drives and is a great early indicator of net revenue retention.
That's right. And then when you then you nail this. You got your product in. People are.
It's full deployment.
The reason the revenue is growing is you have some revenue metric or usage metric that enables the company to deploy it to other folks, and then so a lot of other folks have it. They're really happy with it. So it's growing kind of on its own without as much work to do for the company customer success manager or the person, the salesperson.
And so the next step is to help your champion become a hero. And that is how to help your champion get promoted or become an industry celebrity. And there, what I find is that as a vendor, you need to create a hero report.
That's right.
What is a hero report is to take all this work that the champion has been doing, about getting adoption, full deployment and all that into a one-pager, which drives a metric that the CEO or board cares about.
That's amazing. So you're trying to drive that to a metric.
Like in Marketo's case, is like new pipeline.
New pipeline. Right. So we're driving new pipeline and that's the winner. So now that person becomes a hero.
Right. And because it's getting impacting things at the CEO, and because what is a hero in a company?
Save the company.
Yeah. You're doing something that the CEO cares about.
In Marketo's case, it's being able to understand how I drive repeatable revenue.
Yeah. It's like Rajiv, in your case, how many employees do you have?
200.
You have 200 employees. I mean, if one of them started doing things that drove things that you really cared about, that person's on a path to being a hero in your eyes, right?
My replacement.
Absolutely.
Speaking about replacements, so now we have the 6 elements of the story, right? And then eventually that company becomes the industry standard. They go from, in the Marketo's case, from being a marketing manager to maybe even the CMO because they embraced this revenue marketing approach. Or in Talkdesk's situation, probably someone that's the chief customer officer or chief contact officer. So it becomes an industry standard and everyone wins, right?
Yes.
So now there's this new thing, right? This thing that we're all, let me switch gears a little bit. There's a new thing. It's called AI, right? And your firm, or AI's been around for a while.
Absolutely.
AI's been around for a while. I mean, there's the old firm. Now your firm, Storm Ventures, focuses primarily on B2B SaaS or software companies. And so you're looking at it and there's a whole world of AI things right now. Everybody says they're doing something in AI. And how do you, at the same time, there's a lot of talk about how AI replaces workers, changes the way whole companies are built and run. So from your perspective, how do you play out some of these scenarios? How do you think about what's happening next? Not just if there's an investment scenario, there's a personal scenario. how should people think about it?
Right. It's something I've thought about a lot, and we have a very specific strategy in mind. The way I look at it is we are going through a moment which reminds me very much of 1997 when the first browser came out, or 2007 when the iPhone came out. And what I mean by that is that, the internet existed before the browser. Mobile phones existed before the iPhone.
That's right. But
each one created a dramatic change because, after the browser, it created .coms. Right. After the iPhone, it created all the mobile apps.
Yes.
And in the same way, what I feel is that AI has existed for a long time.
Right.
The breakthrough moment is LLMs.
Yes.
ChatGPT is a large language model, and it's the first time that everyday people like you and I can see and feel the power of AI in a broad sense. Before ChatGPT, we had AI, but it was all very task-specific AI. Think of Siri, think of like AlphaGo that beat the Go player, or, so it's very task-specific.
That's
With
right.
ChatGPT and large language models, we are seeing the power of AI on a very broad general scale.
You can realize it in a fundamental way that you really couldn't before. Before, you couldn't really play with it unless you were an expert. You knew potentially some of that was happening in the background.
And it was tied to very specific things. Yes. So exactly.
And now anyone can go in and start asking questions or asking for reports to be written or information to be dissected into ChatGPT, and it's just transformative.
Yes. And that's why, as I said, it reminds me of those moments of the browser and the internet and
huge
the
transition
mobile.
moments.
Yes. And so now, in a sense, users know what they want. They just, for all these enterprise apps and all this, they want a ChatGPT-like experience for HR or for whatever. And there's going to be a profound change. And so I view it as a huge disruption right now with these large language models.
So like when we were at before the browser, it was just command line.
Yes.
Right. You would just type in commands and you had to know what to do. Well, the browser all of a sudden opened your world to all the things you could potentially see.
It created the World Wide Web.
Right. And then you could buy things. You could.
It created the .coms.
Talk to people in a way that you couldn't talk to before.
Yes.
With the mobile phone, all of a sudden you had the ability to take that conversation anywhere, but then you could interact with apps, music.
Yes.
And
Spotify, or Uber.
Or Uber.
Or
Uber was completely
WhatsApp,
transformative.
Or
right?
WhatsApp.
Yes.
I mean, Uber, WhatsApp, Spotify, all these mobile would not have existed without
widespread smartphone.
The iPhone. Yeah.
And so now you have AI, and that's completely transformative.
And by the way, every year is like getting 10 times smarter. ChatGPT 3.5 was like having, a smart high school student as your intern. And now with 4, it's like, maybe an undergrad as an intern. But pretty soon, it's like you could have a genius be your assistant.
When you think about it as an investment, and investing in companies, are you saying if they don't have an LLM or large language model story as part of what they're doing, does that change your calculus? Or is it that other companies like this will blow up companies that you might have invested in? How do you think about it?
Yes. I mean, the large language model. So the way I look at investing is, I'm looking to surf the wave. And so large language model is a huge tidal wave that's going to like the entire translation industry is going to get disrupted.
Wow.
Because translation will become so good.
Yep.
Large language models are going to read all documents and analyze documents and make summaries very well. So think of all the lawyers that do discovery.
It's gone.
Reading emails, reading documents, you can just crank it, have this crank it out.
You can file cases differently.
You can file cases. But I'm just saying
even as what I think about it with LLMs is that from a lawyer's point of view, it may change the way you research.
Yes.
From the litigant's point of view, you may be able to file cases you may not need that initial attorney to make the assessment.
It's like having a good junior attorney help you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just amazing. It could help you, and it could even take you all the way to, here's your idea and here's what your case would look like. Is it worthwhile doing or not?
Right. So that's what I'm saying is that it is a fundamental disruption comparable to the browser that then created the World Wide Web and all the .coms, or the smartphone that created all these mobile apps. And that, the LLM is going to create all these LLM apps. Yeah. And so that's what we're interested in investing in is LLM apps.
And I even see that for my company, right? We do marketing work. This is the easiest thing in the world to disrupt.
All
LLMs.
Content creation is going to change. Content creation is going to change.
Image creation. So we look at it as an existential opportunity.
Yes.
And it's time we have to change. Otherwise, this business, the wave will crash above you as opposed to surfing.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen like the power on how we use ChatGPT. Well, the next one that's going to come out, it's going to be multimodal.
That's right.
So it's not just text. There'll be text, voice, video, and all that. So,
I think they're already piloting it with the latest version of ChatGPT. Would you, like, if you look at your favorite innovations, you mentioned now 3, would you consider that your favorite?
You mean the LLM?
The notion of the LLM and what it drives. Would you say that's your favorite?
Yes.
Or would you say another one was?
No, I think it is, it's going to be the most profound because it impacts a lot of this white collar work. And it's going to make each of us so much smarter and productive.
That's the part. Like if you take advantage of it.
Yes.
And it's so easy to.
Yes.
It could fundamentally change all of our lives, not just the lives of the lower skilled folks. It's everyone.
Everyone. Yes.
Yes. I think so too. I think it's completely magical and completely exciting. And I see my own team playing with these things, and I'm just, they feel a sense of empowerment. If we take you back to when you decided to move down this path of enabling entrepreneurs. You're son of immigrants. You came to the U.S. at the age of 5. Was there something in that time that said, I need to go into this world or go into this game-changing world? Because as kids, as a child of an immigrant, your parent might say, especially Korean parents or Indian parents, you could be a doctor.
Yes.
You could be I don't know if they said lawyer. You could be an engineer. You could be.
Yeah, no. I became a lawyer actually as a compromise with my parents.
Is this in the negotiation?
Yeah, it was a negotiation. They wanted me to go MD, PhD. My father was a medical school professor in Korea, and his view was, Korea went through the Civil War and so forth, the Korean War.
Yes.
And so his view is there's a lot of political uncertainty, but one thing is every society wants doctors.
Yes.
And so doctor is the best profession. And so a lot of pressure.
It's definitely the safest.
Yes.
Because someone's going to get hurt.
Yes.
As you get older, you always need a doctor.
Absolutely. And so a lot of pressure to go to medicine. In my case, I was an applied math major at Harvard. And so I wanted to program and go to business school. Yes. And so we compromised on law school.
So
and that's how I became a lawyer.
So you said, okay, and they were okay with you going down the math road because that's technical.
Yes.
And so you went to Harvard, which is, I'm sure, your parents' dream. I'm sure they, growing up, they must have said, what? All you got was a 98.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right. Yes. I got a lot of that. Yes. Well, my mother would always say, if you got a 98, why don't you get 100? And if you got 100, it's like, can you do it again?
What? No extra credit?
Yeah, no extra points.
Yeah. But then when I went to...
We don't know what that's like at all.
Yeah. But then when I went to Harvard and met other Koreans or Asians like myself, we found we're all raised the same way.
That's right.
We were all raised to be thoroughbreds to run races.
So you found kinship in
Yes.
fellow Harvard grads or Harvard students. And then from there, you said go to law because that was part of this negotiation. I can apply these technical skills.
It's a
and logic.
professional degree.
It's
so
professional.
Yes.
You have to get licensed.
Yes.
They make good money.
Yes.
And so you go in as a lawyer, and you worked for a law firm for some time, more traditional one.
So
then you went from there to like a venture firm.
Right. So I went to Wilson Sonsini because Wilson Sonsini focuses on startups, and made partner there and worked with lots of startups, and then co-founded Venture Law Group. And so during that time period, I worked with like several hundred startups and helped them get venture capital financing, go public, do M&A, and just work with startups and the whole startup journey.
I'm just curious, what was it like going from math to law, from applied math to being a lawyer?
I thought tort was something you ate. I didn't know it was a field of law.
I still thought that. So, okay, great.
Yeah.
Good to know.
And I had no idea what Brown versus School Board of Education was. All these Supreme Court cases, I had absolutely no idea. I knew a lot about Fourier transforms, but nothing about constitutions law or things like that. So it was for the first semester like learning a foreign language.
It's a hard turn into law if you are so into math, right?
Yes.
Because everything's a formula, and you can always derive to a basic truth.
Exactly. And you realize that law is just based on human values.
That's right.
And so what people think is fair changes.
Completely changes over time.
Shifting
it's different
sands.
across different countries.
Exactly right.
Different systems. My son is just graduated from law school, and he really enjoyed international law. Because you could see the fundamental basis was different country. I think he's even took a class and did a little bit of South African law just to see the difference. And their view of the world view of the human is different.
Exactly. So law is based on values versus science is based on nature, which, it doesn't change in that manner.
Was that one of the sparks for you to say that's why startups are interesting? Because now you could see a fundamentally different system that could be...
I was actually just interested in new products and new startups. And that's why I went into applied math, because I was very interested in innovation. And this is where I think as an immigrant, you always feel like, you're outside rather than in. And so, then it's like, how can I innovate? How can I do things,
Was this as a child?
Like 9th, 10th grade.
So 9th and 10th grade is when you go to high school.
Yes.
You're freshman in high school. Was there a teacher?
I think it was just a whole variety, not one teacher, but just in general. And it helped that, my father was a medical school professor in Korea. So he was into research. And I have an older brother who's a medical school professor.
And I think he's older, right?
He's 12 years older than me. Yes.
And then and that's usually 8th, 9th grade is a time of transition as an adolescent.
Yes. And so that's why I became really interested in math and science and innovation, that kind of stuff. And that's what I was interested in. And then through that, I realized startups is just a very efficient way of implementing that. And then as I worked with a lot of companies, I became fascinated in the startup journey and the importance of culture and vision within companies.
When did you feel that you got that exposure? Is that after you went into law, or did you feel that way somewhat in college? Or
that's when I started working with a lot of startups.
And then all of a sudden because at Wilson Sonsini, that's usually one of the go-to law firms for entrepreneurs.
Right. And so, and that's why I went there, because, if you want to be a great doctor, you got to go where you get a lot of patients, right? And so if you want to be a good lawyer, you need a lot of practice. So I went there and got a lot of volume and experience.
And you met so many entrepreneurs. And I think at one point I heard you say you were closer to a lot of the entrepreneurs as an attorney.
Then as a VC. So in 2000, I made the switch from being an attorney to a VC. And and I would invest in several of our, my former clients. And so as an attorney, you're like the family doctor. the CEOs will brainstorm with you. They'll talk about a lot of these ideas and concerns and so forth. And they also know, you got attorney-client privilege, and then you can always fire your attorney and so forth. So you have that.
Right. You're not married to them like as a venture capitalist.
Well, not just that, but not just married, but if you have a VC who owns 20% of the company and is on your board, yeah, they can fire you, right? You've got a VC who can fire you versus, and so I found that the same person would, instead of like brainstorming with me, would just give me very filtered results. and I guess the person doesn't want to look bad, doesn't want to express doubts.
If you do that, then they think that same vision they crafted may be less than what they crafted.
So I found that, as you know, Rajiv, CEO is a very lonely job, because if you talk about your fears and doubts with your employees, they'll freak out. They're going to leave.
They're going to freak out too.
They're going to quit.
Although that is kind of a new trend. You can talk about that today.
Yeah, but they'll look for new jobs.
While they're looking on LinkedIn.
Yeah, exactly. If you share that with your customers, then your customers may leave.
Out.
Yeah. And so if you share that with your investors, then, there's a good chance they're not going to put more money in you or, want to support you and so forth. So it's like, as CEO, it's really hard to share doubts and fears with a lot of people.
Yes.
And it turns out many times your company attorney is the one you can.
It's okay to talk to that.
And you can fire that person. Yeah.
I'm getting a really good picture of you, Tae Hea, because one of the questions we always ask in our guest intake form, we always ask, what's a historical event or person or movement that inspires you? And you had answered, or maybe it was your assistant that answered, but they answered military leaders.
Yeah.
And so
maybe ChatGPT response.
I've been fascinated by military leaders and military history and so forth, because war is obviously extremely horrible. People suffer and so forth. But I also found, because of that, you can see the best and the worst of people in war. And not that I want to be in war myself, but, by watching like war movies, reading about military leaders, I feel like you can really understand what true leadership really is, what courage, inspiration, and all that is when, I see that.
Because the stakes are so high, the highest, life and death ultimately. And so you really have to be inspiring in a way that gets people willing to put their life on the line, right?
Do you have a favorite war that you like to study, or a favorite?
That's a funny question. What's your favorite war?
What's your favorite war? I'll give you. Here's my weirdness. I loved studying the Revolutionary War, American Revolutionary War.
Yeah, that's a good one.
World War II.
Yeah.
Civil War is good. That's an intense time, and I've studied that. World War I was a little less interesting.
Yeah. Nobody cares about World War I. It's like the prequels.
Exactly. It's the same way. I'm very interested in the Civil War and World War II. And so part of Civil War, we had the Battle of Gettysburg.
Right.
And so I was fortunate that my family and we actually went to Gettysburg and seeing the battlefield, because they keep it in the same condition as it was back then. And so actually being there, you get a much better understanding of, how heroic it must really be. I mean, to walk across like 1.5 miles of cornfields.
Yes.
Or wheat fields where you're just way out in the open, having 15,000.
Yes. In hand-to-hand combat.
Yeah,
literally
it's just shocking.
This is my crazy pitch, Tae Hea, that I've always wanted to go, because I love going to those historical sites as well. Like following the Tea Party, like where that happened. Yes. We're from New England, so we'd go visit, as kids. I want to use AR, okay, so you could pick up your phone and then like you could see people enacting the actual event, because people do these reenactments anyway.
Yeah.
So could you shoot that and somehow it'd be so immersive, right?
Yeah.
You could actually see the event happen before your very eyes.
I agree with you. I mean, I'm actually a huge believer in AR. Yes.
Great. So I can count you as an early investor. Perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
The Apple Vision Pro, an app on the Apple Vision Pro will enable you, one day, I would assume, enable you to do that.
Yes, it's going to take time, but I think AR will replace all smartphones.
It's going to be amazing. So here's an interesting one. This is great to learn about your passion for history and game changers. And one of the things that, as a person really close to the entrepreneurial journey, you've talked about, as your growth is accelerating, CEOs need to unlearn what they're good at. Help me
Explain.
understand that.
Right. So basically, what makes you really succeed at one stage can kill you at the next stage of the company. In the early stage, for example, where you don't have go-to-market fit and you need to find a path, it's like you want someone like an explorer that can, without a map, without supplies, facing hostiles, they don't freak out, and they find a path through the wilderness. As soon as you find that path, you don't need an explorer type.
That's right. You're done with that.
Yeah, you're done with the explorer right now. Yeah, you found the path. Instead, you need a warrior leader that can then recruit other great warriors, motivate, and so forth to fight a much bigger foe. Because usually, you're fighting bigger incumbents and so forth. So there's no fear, and you just can be victorious. And think of like Mel Gibson and Braveheart.
That's right.
That kind of warrior leader.
Leading from the front.
Leading from the front.
Winston Churchill, Boer War.
Exactly. Or like Zelensky in Ukraine right now. I mean, if Zelensky had fled Ukraine on the first day.
Had he taken the American plane ticket,
yes,
it would have been a whole different game.
It'd be like Afghanistan.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And they wouldn't fight with such.
So you need someone out there on the horse doing the Sons of Scotland. You need some, doing the big rousing speech. Okay. All right.
Exactly. And this is why I'm so fascinated by military leaders, and like King Henry and Shakespeare at the Battle of Agincourt is like one of my favorite speeches. Then the next is you have this warrior leader that you get the warriors, but then after you have like 50 to 100 warriors, you need someone who's great at managing warrior leaders. Yeah. And they're the model that comes to mind.
It's a whole different thing.
Yes. And so like in World War II, because as you know, like military history, it's like Dwight Eisenhower. Yes. Dwight Eisenhower was phenomenal at managing warrior leaders, even though he never fought in battle.
You need a Robert the Bruce. Yeah. or a general. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And he's maybe even George Washington was that way.
Yes.
He would take his horse up to the plain to oversee the battle, but he wouldn't actually fight in it.
Right?
I want to connect that back to the entrepreneur, right? So the entrepreneur, as that military leader, first they're searching, then they're working with other warrior leaders, and then they're overseeing all those generals, and they're just very different things. Do you feel like one CEO can do it all? There's some people with the notion of, well, every time I hit a stage, I'll get a different kind of CEO, or like, what's your thought on this? You must know some that have done it all and some that haven't.
So this has to do in particular with founder CEOs. What I've observed and experienced is that most companies that succeed have founder CEOs that can transform himself or herself and learn and unlearn through this journey. So if you look at companies that have succeeded,
that's right.
The founder CEO has grown in this manner. At the same time, if you look at most companies that get started, the founder CEO does not make it especially after two down rounds.
Sometimes the one down round is the kiss of death.
One down round is the kiss of death. Yes. And so this is the other area that I've been actually. So one is unlock growth.
So they unlock growth.
So
they make these transformations.
And the other is about what founder CEO. First, because we invest a lot of first-time founder CEOs, is what founder CEO can really grow
Yes.
and be successful is the other question that I've been spending a lot of time on and trying to understand.
Wait, so sorry, let me understand that, because you're saying unlock growth in terms of the product or whatever it is that they're selling, the company, and then you're saying learn to grow within themselves to adapt and change. Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
So you're looking for the kind of founder that can embrace the methodology and continue to change themselves as they go through each one of these phases. And you're trying to study what kind of person can be like that.
Yes.
How do you evaluate that, though? I'm just curious. Like, you're saying you invest in a lot of first timers. Like, what do you look for? Are there like, secret questions that or trick questions that you ask and you see they come up with the clever answer? How do you find that out?
Just like everything, this is work in process. So I'll give you the current state of thinking right now. Okay. Yeah. And you got to understand whether on all these things, this is like continual evolution, because, I'm continually trying to get better. Okay. Is when I look at successful CEOs, I find that there are three fundamental things we need. One is they need to have the right vision in terms of where the technology, product, and customers are going and so forth, having the right vision. I think if we were investing in like restaurants or something like that, it would be different. But in what we're doing, it's going through so much change. Tech goes through so much change that if you don't have the right vision, it doesn't really matter.
And is that sort of connected to a core value, that kind of a thing? Like, because you're saying that there's the shifting sands of tech, right? Like, who knows, in 3 months, AI may make this big leap and it's going to throw your whole business model off course. So what you're looking for in a founder is someone who's like, I'm looking 50 years or 10 years down the line. And connecting to like a core value.
Their vision can subsume technological change. Is that the thinking?
Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, just by talking with a person, you can get an idea of whether you believe the vision. So the vision is so critical, and a key element of the vision I find is a person is curious. So it is sort of curious rather than being bombastic. And the second, as a good instincts for the North Star. So, and that's the first thing, is that you have to have the right vision, because if you don't have, it's like knowing where the wave is going. If you don't know where the wave is going, you're going to make bad decisions. Right. It's hard to recruit people. It's hard to get customers and all that. So it's just having the right vision is critical. And at the end, it comes down to, do I believe the vision?
Right. Okay. So there's number one is the vision.
Number one's the vision. The second thing is that the person's got to be able to drive execution. In other words, when I say drive execution, I mean win this race. So if it's in the beginning where you're an explorer, it's like, win the explorer race. Or, you got to be able to, because you're competing. You have the vision, and then you got to like drive execution to win that race. And there you can see a person who the drive, the ability to hire the right people, make the right decisions. So it's about winning that race. And then the third thing is, and this is what we were talking about, is the change, is how do you change yourself so you can win the next race?
Yes. So let's pick one of your favorite founders. Because they can't all be like your kids that you love them all, right? This is pick one of your founders.
Yeah, sort of like take like Phil Fernandez. He was the founder CEO of Marketo, and he had a vision of this whole marketing automation space.
Right, the revenue marketer.
Yes,
marketers shouldn't just be branding geeks.
Right, they should have a seat at the revenue table.
They should be branding ones.
Yes. Have a seat at the revenue table.
Yes. So that they have to be part of driving revenue.
Yes.
And then he had this vision.
Yes.
And he went from that vision to, he went through a lot of stuff. It wasn't a straight
No. And I'm not trying to say.
And he could persevere through it.
Yes.
So that was part of your great founder. And then he found a way to execute by building the right team around him.
Yes. And then, win the first race, which was competing against Eloqua.
That's right. That was a tough one.
Yes, it's a tough because he was ahead.
I know some of the founders there. They're friends. Yes.
Yeah, no, it's a great company, and they were ahead of Marketo.
Right.
But, how can Marketo win? And the way it happened is that Eloqua got positioned as the powerful solution.
Super complex. It's great. It's like it's like a race car.
Yeah.
You have to tune every freaking thing to make it work. Yes.
So it became a competition between ease of use and power.
Right.
And so, some customers went for power.
Yes.
And then some came for ease of use, but this is how Marketo took off.
Made its place. And then the last part was about shifting sands, right? So there's great execution.
Yes. But then, the company at 1 million is very different than a company at 10 million or 100 million.
Or a billion.
Or a billion. Yeah. Yes. And so being able to change yourself and your team.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And so he was able to traverse that whole thing, taking it public.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. That's awesome. Okay. So now this was really awesome, Tae Hea. I love this.
Shift gears.
So why don't you introduce it since you're the game guy?
That's right.
Before you go into the game, I will say that one of the things there's people who play different types of games.
Mm-hmm.
And what's your favorite game?
Okay, good. If it wasn't, because the whole game is based on that answer, so great.
Okay.
You like Civilization because?
It's strategy games. I can play with strategy simulation games, so I can, tax a lot of elements.
World. You can see things evolve. You can see technology
You start
evolve.
from small to big.
Yeah. You go through the Stone Age, Bronze Age, Iron Age, all these ages.
Yes.
I got to tell you, I had to stop playing these games back in business school because I found I was playing these games this in SimCity instead of reading my cases.
Yes, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
I think we've all been there.
Glad you actually have the discipline to play that and still be a very successful VC. So
you got to have some fun in life, right? You got to have some diversion, right?
Yeah.
And you look, if there's any diversion to have, it's got to be Civilization. Well, okay, so this is our game segment. I'm now officially dubbing the Spark Tank. So welcome to the Spark Tank. Yeah, Spark Tank. There you go. Great. Okay, got sound effects and everything. I'm going to ask you just a few questions about Civilization. It's just a trivia game here to see how good of a Civilization junkie you really are. Okay. So I'm going to start off, I think, pretty easy. Question number one. Who created Civilization? Was it A, Sid Meier, B, Jake Meier, or C, Oscar Meier?
Sid Meier.
That's correct. Are you sure it wasn't the hot dog guy?
Yeah.
Hot dog.
Final answer, Sid Meier. Yes, correct. Great. So 1 point on the board there. Okay, Civilization was a genre-defying game. Defying and defining. It defined the genre of the 4X strategy game. And the 4 X's are, and you're going to complete the 4th X for us: explore, expand, exploit, and blank. A, exist forever. B, exterminate. Or C, ex machina.
What was the third one? Ex machina.
Ex machina.
Remember the AI movie?
I would say
it's usually never the third one because that's the joke answer.
Yeah. It's the second one. I can't remember the second one, but I think it's the second one.
Are you sure?
It explore, expand, exploit, exterminate. Yes, that is correct. That is the genre of 4X strategy games.
Wow.
So 2 for 2.
I would have picked Exploit Forever. So I guess I was off on this game.
Yes. Oh, that's right. I guess we could have you answer too.
I think Tae Hea would have a lot more fun with it.
All right. So which of these things is an actual thing that can happen in the game of Civilization? A, Gandhi could nuke you. Mahatma Gandhi could nuke you. Mm-hmm. B, you can play as Finland and build a sauna wonder of the world. Or C, you could become Genghis Khan's lover.
It's the first one. Gandhi can nuke you.
That is correct. There was actually a bug in the initial game that if you chose democracy for Gandhi as his the form of government,
Right.
that he would become very aggressive and become a nuclear threat. And so the founders of the game thought it was so funny and fun that they kept it, and that's now a recurring theme that Gandhi can become very aggressive.
Talk about totally going against his makeup.
Yeah. It's a comedic choice there. All right, so far 3 for 3. There's only 2 more questions left. Let's see if you can be a perfect 5 for 5. Which of these does not appear as a buildable wonder in Civilization 6? The Taj Mahal, the Great Wall of China, or Machu Picchu?
Ooh, this one's a hard one.
Yeah, it's a deep cut.
Well, I know you can build the Taj Mahal, and I know you could build Machu Picchu, so it must be the Great Wall.
That is correct. You cannot build the Great Wall as a wonder. You can build it as an actual wall if you picked the Chinese civilization. So that's the deep cut. Wow, you are definitely a hardcore player. Final question: which is the best civilization to play in Civilization? Now there is only one actual right answer, so you're gonna. This is not subjective. A. Teddy Roosevelt of America. B. Shundok of Korea. Or C. Gandhi of India. Which one's the best civilization?
Would say Teddy Roosevelt.
Wow. Okay. All right. Truly is whatever answer you picked. So congratulations.
Okay.
5 for 5.
Okay. All right. Okay. No, but I usually play Napoleon of France.
Oh,
Napoleon's your guy.
A conqueror.
Yeah, that's the persona I generally play.
And why do you pick that? Why do you like Napoleon of France?
I find that I get these extra cultural points in the beginning, and it just helps me grow quickly.
There you go. Oh, you like quick growth. It's the dating wow of Napoleon.
Yeah,
he's all about scalable growth, unlocking growth.
Yeah, but the thing I should tell you about games is, I love games, just like Rajiv. Did a lot of games and growing up. So I invested in a game company in Korea, and it became a unicorn. I was on the board for 10 years, did well. But then I found that games I like don't become popular. And so that's when I realized I should stay away from B2C investing.
I love that.
Because to be a good B2C investor, you got to know what's going to be popular.
And I'd say that's really hard.
Yeah, and I don't have that skill.
I think I've talked about this with other folks, but I think B2C, I've heard that B2C is harder because you're catching what is the flavor of the time.
Right, but I think Sandeep has that skill.
He's got that.
Of knowing what's going to be popular. Yeah. So I don't have that.
Yes and no.
But I could have an idea of how to sell.
Listen, I could do a whole podcast on this myself, but it is about putting as many arrows in the quiver as you possibly can, and shoot as many shots as you can at the target.
That's awesome. Let me ask you the final question, which is: you've had a great opportunity to see Silicon Valley up close, and from your perspective as a son of an immigrant family, and or son of immigrants. What have you seen? If you were to mark the change in Silicon Valley, how would you mark it?
That's a great question. I would say that it's just becoming so global. It's like I feel like Silicon Valley is becoming a microcosm of the whole world.
Mm.
Yeah, it's true. There used to be a few folks, and now all the world's cultures come here.
Exactly right.
And you can sense it and feel it and touch it, and anywhere you go, you can take that with you, and you feel connected.
Yes.
Is that a
yes? Versus like I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, and it definitely doesn't have the same global feeling.
Well, maybe they need to add another character to Civilization. Maybe it's Steve Jobs as the civilization of Silicon Valley. That is expansive and expanding throughout the world.
Right.
Wow, that was fantastic. So, Tae Hea, I want to really thank you for all your time and your really thoughtful answers and just the brilliant insight that you've brought to us. So I thank you for coming in today.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Really enjoyed it.
wow, he was just fantastic. I was just blown away at how in depth he could get, but not too deep and professorial.
I didn't even have to do the whole, watching out for you guys getting too deep in the weeds. He was so clear and understandable.
It was stayed on. And I think like if I take one big thing away from him is that he was curious all his life. He saw what he combined. He's a great integrator. He combined his Korean heritage and their desire for making impact, change, but being successful and being hyper-focused. And he fell in love with innovation at a young age. He fell in love with, and he built his path through math and then becoming an attorney and then getting involved with startups. It was just this, it's not your typical path, but he sees it as a straightforward path. And it's just a really amazing background, how he's taken to that and then built this amazing framework that's so easy to understand and follow. And this is literally like 20 plus years of work that he's put into to make it that straightforward.
I'm gonna go off that for my big takeaway, which for me was the whole unlearning piece.
Yes.
That's the thing that I struggle with as sort of the leader of my of Effin' Funny. And it plays right into what you're talking about with curiosity, as that being your kind of guidepost, trusting that, let your curiosity in the places that you have questions be the thing that drives you into how, either whatever your next endeavor is, or also for your company, but also for personal growth and making sure that you're
willing to change. You're right. You're the Braveheart, right? You're William Wallace, who's fighting 1 minute, and then you're the general looking over other William Wallaces, and it's just amazing.
Right. At some point, you're like, listen, I got a bum ankle. I can't be the guy at the front of the charge anymore, but I have a lot of experience, and so I can help the next William Wallace do their thing.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the pod, please take a moment to rate it and comment. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and everywhere podcasts can be found.
The show is produced by Rajiv Parikh and Anand Shah, production assistance by Taryn Talley, and edited by Sean Marr and Matt Greenleaf.
All great people. I'm your host, Rajiv Parikh from Position Squared, a leading growth marketing company based in Silicon Valley. Come visit us at position2.com.
This has been an Effin' Funny production.
We'll catch you next time. And remember, folks, be ever curious.